Welcome to our deep dive into David Deutsch's The Beginning of Infinity. We're going to unpack some pretty mind-bending ideas about knowledge, progress, and the very fabric of reality. We've got excerpts from the book lined up and ready to go.
Yeah, Deutsch really pushes us to reconsider our assumptions about how the universe works and what's even possible.
One thing that struck me right away is how Deutsch tackles the power of explanation. He uses the example of looking up at stars and knowing that they're actually distant suns. It's wild to think that we can understand something so far away, something we could never directly experience.
Right? It really highlights the incredible reach of good explanations. They allow us to go beyond our immediate senses and grasp truths about the universe that would otherwise be hidden.
But how do we know those explanations are actually true? We haven't journeyed to a star's core to confirm it.
That's where Deutsch's criteria for good explanations come in. He argues that a good explanation is hard to vary, while still accounting for all the observations. Take the axis tilt theory of the seasons, for example.
Okay, so the axis tilt theory explains why we have summer and winter here on Earth. We experience it every year. But what makes that explanation so powerful?
Because it not only explains the basic seasonal changes, but it also makes counterintuitive predictions that turn out to be true. Think about the extreme north and south poles. The axis tilt period predicts 6 months of daylight followed by 6 months of darkness. That's a pretty bold prediction, and it's exactly what we observe.
So the fact that the axis tilt explanation can accurately predict these seemingly strange phenomena gives us confidence that it's a good explanation.
Precisely. It's hard to imagine another explanation that could account for all those observations, while remaining so simple and elegant. This power of explanation, Deutsch argues, is what makes humans unique. He calls us universal constructors.
Universal constructors. I'm intrigued, but also a little skeptical. What does he mean by that?
He means that humans, unlike any other species, have the potential to create knowledge that allows us to achieve anything that isn't forbidden by the laws of physics.
Anything. That seems like an incredibly bold claim. Does he really believe there are no limits to what humans can achieve?
He argues that the resources of the Earth, even a cubic kilometer of empty space, become potentially infinite when combined with the right knowledge. He uses the thought experiment of a space station existing in a cube, containing only a single hydrogen atom.
Okay, single hydrogen atom. That sounds pretty bleak. How could you possibly achieve anything with that?
With the right knowledge, you could extract energy from that atom. You could build tools. You could even create new knowledge. That one hydrogen atom becomes a stepping stone to potentially infinite possibilities.
So it's not about the physical resources themselves, but about our understanding of how to use them. That's a powerful idea. But it makes me wonder why we've clung to bad explanations for so long.
Deutsch explores this by contrasting good explanations with flawed ones. He uses creationism as a prime example of a bad explanation.
Creationism basically says a supernatural being created everything, right? It doesn't really explain how anything works.
Exactly. It just pushes the mystery back a step. A good explanation needs to explain the phenomenon itself, not rely on unexplained entities or forces. Deutsch also contrasts neo-Darwinism with another flawed evolutionary theory, Lamarckism.
So Lamarckism is the idea that traits acquired during an organism's lifetime can be inherited. Like, if a giraffe stretches its neck to reach leaves, its offspring will inherit longer necks.
Right, but that's not how inheritance works. Neo-Darwinism offers a much more robust and well-supported explanation, one that has implications far beyond biology.
I've heard people say that neo-Darwinism is not just about biology, but about how knowledge itself evolves. Is that what Deutsch is getting at?
Exactly. Neo-Darwinism explains how knowledge is created through a process of replication, variation, and selection. You have an idea, you test it out, you keep the parts that work, and discard what doesn't. It's a universal process that applies to everything, from scientific theories to technological innovations, to even the evolution of memes.
So we're talking about the survival of the fittest ideas, the ones that best explain the world around us.
Yes. And this leads to a challenge for the reductionist view. The idea that everything can be explained by breaking it down into its simplest parts.
Is he saying that reductionism is wrong?
Not necessarily. But Deutsch argues that there are emergent phenomena that can't be fully understood, simply by looking at the individual components. He used the example of feeling the pull of gravity.
Hold on, I definitely feel gravity, but he's saying that feeling isn't real.
Not quite. He's saying that feeling is an emergent phenomena, arising from the complex interaction of matter and space-time. It's not that gravity doesn't exist, but our experience of it comes from a higher-level explanation, than just looking at individual atoms.
So our understanding of the world is built on layers of explanations, with each layer adding new insights.
Exactly. This concept of emergence is crucial to understanding how knowledge progresses. New layers of reality and explanation can arise from lower-level phenomena, leading to what Deutsch calls the jump to universality.
The jump to universality. I'm picturing something out of a superhero movie. What does he mean by that?
He's referring to how systems can go from being limited and specific to becoming capable of representing and manipulating anything. Think about the evolution of number systems. He takes us all the way back to simple tally systems.
Like counting on your fingers.
Exactly. But then he jumps to the Greek numeral system. The Greeks almost stumbled upon a universal system, but they missed it because they set arbitrary limits.
So close, yet so far. What stopped them?
The Greek system had a symbol for 1,000, but not for larger numbers. So they had to resort to awkward workarounds to represent very large quantities. Imagine trying to do advanced math with a system like that.
It would be like trying to write a novel using only the first 10 letters of the alphabet. You could technically do it, but it would be incredibly difficult and limiting.
Exactly. And that's where the positional numeral system developed in India comes in. It achieved universality through a simple yet profound rule change.
What was the breakthrough?
Instead of having unique symbols for every power of 10, they used the same digits, 0, 9, and their position within the number determined their value. This simple change allowed the representation of any number, no matter how large, with the same set of symbols.
I never really thought about it that way. That's pretty elegant. What's the connection to this jump to universality idea?
This positional system was a key step toward the development of universal computation. Think about Babbage's analytical engine, the first conceptualization of a universal computer.
So, by applying the same logic of a universal number system to a machine, you could, in theory, compute anything.
Precisely. The power to simulate physical reality using a universal system is a fundamental shift in our ability to understand and manipulate the world around us.
This makes me wonder about the limits of artificial intelligence. Can a machine truly be creative? Or is it always going to be limited by the rules we program into it?
That's where the discussion of the Turing test comes in. Can a machine convincingly imitate human conversation?
But isn't the Turing test more about fooling people than about true intelligence?
That's a key point that Deutsch brings up. He uses the example of a chatbot named Lbot that won a Loebner Prize, a Turing test competition, by telling a joke.
So the computer told a joke. Does that mean it understands humor?
That's the question. Was it a pre-programmed response? Or did the program actually create the joke itself? The Turing test focuses solely on behavior. But to understand true intelligence, you need to understand the process behind the behavior.
So we need to look under the hood, so to speak, to see how the AI is generating its responses.
Exactly. Focusing solely on outward behavior is a dead end for understanding intelligence. We need to understand the process of creating explanations, not just the output.
This whole conversation about AI and creativity is making me rethink everything I thought I knew about consciousness. It's a bit unsettling, honestly.
It is. And it leads us to another mind-bending concept that Deutsch explores, the multiverse.
Okay, here's where things get really weird. Multiple universes, as in there are countless versions of reality, and we're just living in one of them.
That's the idea. And it's not just a sci-fi concept. It's a serious interpretation of quantum mechanics. Deutsch explains how the multiverse interpretation elegantly resolves many of the paradoxes that arise from quantum theory.
Okay, I'm willing to have my mind blown. Walk me through this.
He starts with a thought experiment. Imagine two identical universes.
Okay, got it. Two identical universes existing side by side.
Now imagine a tiny difference is introduced. Let's say a transporter malfunction that slightly alters a single atom. From that point forward, those two universes will begin to diverge, leading to entirely different histories.
So like a cosmic butterfly effect, a tiny change leading to vastly different realities.
Precisely. And when you factor in quantum phenomena like interference and entanglement, we're forced to abandon the notion of a single history and embrace the idea of a constantly branching multiverse.
Okay, this is a lot to process. So there are countless versions of me out there, living out different lives in these branching universes.
That's the implication. Deutsch uses the analogy of geological strata to help visualize the structure of the multiverse.
Okay, I can picture the layers of rock, each representing a different period in Earth's history. But how does that relate to the multiverse?
Just as those rock layers represent different eras, the multiverse is structured with layers representing different histories, branching and merging in complex ways.
So it's not just a bunch of parallel universes existing independently. They are interconnected and influencing each other in ways we can barely imagine.
Exactly. And this interconnectedness has real-world implications. Take, for instance, the development of quantum computers. They harness the power of parallelism across multiple universes to perform calculations that would be impossible for classical computers.
Wow, so the multiverse isn't just a mind-blowing theory, it could actually be a source of immense computational power.
Hmm.
But if this is the way reality actually works, why are we just figuring it out now?
Deutsch argues that the influence of certain philosophical ideas actually hindered the development of quantum mechanics. He calls them bad philosophy. And they led to interpretations of quantum mechanics that were vague, anthropocentric,
Yeah.
and ultimately unproductive.
Hold on, bad philosophy. Isn't philosophy supposed to be about seeking truth and wisdom? How can it be bad?
He's not saying all philosophy is bad, but some philosophical ideas can stifle scientific progress by focusing on the wrong questions or clinging to outdated assumptions. He specifically critiques instrumentalism, which focuses only on the predictive power of theories, without caring about their explanatory value.
So it's like saying, as long as it works, who cares why it works?
Exactly. And that kind of thinking can shut down curiosity and limit our understanding of the world. He also criticizes positivism, which claims that only directly observable things are meaningful.
So if you can't see it or touch it, it doesn't exist.
That's the gist. And this viewpoint leads to a very limited view of reality. Many scientific concepts, like gravity or even the concept of a mind,
Yeah.
involve things we can't directly observe, but are nonetheless crucial for understanding the world.
It's like trying to understand a complex machine by only looking at the outer casing and ignoring all the inner workings.
That's a great analogy. Good explanations often involve abstract concepts, counterintuitive ideas, and things invisible to our senses.
Like the concept of the multiverse itself. It's not something we can directly observe. At least not yet.
Exactly. If we limit ourselves to only what we can directly observe, we'll miss out on understanding the deeper truths about the universe.
This is already making me reconsider my own assumptions about how science works and what constitutes a good explanation. It's challenging, but also incredibly exciting to have my worldview expanded like this.
That's what makes Deutsch's work so compelling. He pushes us to think beyond our current understanding and to embrace the vastness of what we don't yet know.
This is a lot to digest, but I'm definitely hooked. Where do we go from here?
From here, we dive into how these concepts play out in the real world, from the challenges of political decision-making to the power of memes, and even the often misunderstood concept of sustainability.
Okay, I'm ready for more.
Picking up where we left off, let's explore how these profound ideas about knowledge and explanation play out in the real world. Deutsch takes on some pretty controversial topics, and sustainability is a prime example.
Sustainability is such a hot-button issue these days. It can feel like a battle between those who want to preserve the status quo and those who believe in progress and innovation. How does Deutsch approach this?
He argues that the common understanding of sustainability, the idea of preserving things as they are, can actually be a trap. He uses the often cited example of the Easter Island civilization.
Easter Island, the one with the giant stone heads, right? What does their story tell us about sustainability?
The popular narrative is that the Easter Islanders exhausted their resources, particularly trees, leading to societal collapse. That paints a pretty bleak picture of human nature, doesn't it?
It does. It suggests that we're inherently unsustainable, destined to destroy our environment. But is that the whole story?
Deutsch argues that the Easter Islanders' downfall wasn't simply about a lack of resources, but about a lack of knowledge. They failed to adapt to changing environmental conditions. Maybe they lacked the knowledge to prevent deforestation, or perhaps they couldn't innovate new solutions to resource scarcity.
So it's not just about using less, it's about knowing more, about having the creativity and ingenuity to solve problems and find better ways of doing things.
Precisely. And this challenges the notion that progress and sustainability are at odds. Deutsch argues they go hand in hand. Think back 100 years. What was considered a major environmental threat then?
I can't even imagine. Pollution, deforestation.
Actually, horse manure was a major concern. Cities were struggling to deal with the mountains of manure produced by horses used for transportation.
Horse manure? Seriously?
Yes, but the solution wasn't to ban horses or to make horses poop less. That would have been quite a challenge. The solution came from a totally unexpected direction, the invention of the automobile.
So a technological innovation actually solved an environmental problem. That's a fascinating perspective.
And that's Deutsch's point. Solutions often come from the creation of new knowledge, from unexpected breakthroughs that change the game entirely. He believes that focusing solely on preserving the status quo can stifle this kind of innovation.
It makes me think about climate change. A lot of solutions focus on reducing our carbon footprint, but maybe we also need to invest more in radical innovations technologies that could fundamentally change how we generate and use energy.
Exactly. Deutsch argues that true progress requires a dynamic and open-ended approach to problem solving, one that embraces change and seeks new knowledge, not just preservation of the familiar.
This brings to mind the whole debate about nuclear power. It's often seen as dangerous and unsustainable. But what if new knowledge, new innovations in nuclear technology could make it a safe and clean energy source?
It's a possibility worth exploring. Deutsch would encourage us to consider all options, to be open to new ideas and not to dismiss potential solutions based on outdated assumptions or fears.
So it's about embracing a problem-solving mindset, believing that solutions exist and are within our reach, rather than succumbing to pessimism and resignation.
Exactly, and this optimistic perspective extends beyond our physical environment to the realm of ideas and culture. He dives into the concept of memes, and not just the funny internet kind.
Okay, memes. Beyond the cat videos and viral trends, what's Deutsch's take on the power of memes?
He sees them as the units of cultural evolution, the building blocks of our beliefs, values, and behaviors. He argues that memes, like genes, evolve through a process of variation and selection.
So the most successful memes are the ones that spread the fastest. But does that necessarily mean they're the most truthful or beneficial?
That's the interesting part. A meme's success isn't always about truth or usefulness. Sometimes memes spread because they're catchy, emotionally appealing, or tap into our pre-existing biases.
Like those conspiracy theories that seem to take on a life of their own online despite being totally outlandish.
Exactly. Deutsch differentiates between rational memes, grounded in good explanations and evidence, and anti-rational memes, those that spread despite being false or harmful.
So it's like a battle for our minds, a constant struggle between the forces of reason and those that appeal to emotion or fear.
You could say that Deutsch emphasizes the importance of critical thinking in navigating this complex landscape of ideas. We need to be able to evaluate the memes we encounter and to choose those that are rooted in reason and evidence.
This is especially relevant in the age of social media, where misinformation and disinformation can spread like wildfire. It can be difficult to know what to believe.
It can. That's why Deutsch stresses the importance of seeking good explanations. We need to be skeptical of easy answers, to dig deeper, and to be willing to change our minds when presented with better explanations.
It's not just about being right, but about being open to being wrong and to continually refining our understanding.
Yes, this ability to critically evaluate information and to be open to new ideas is crucial for what Deutsch calls a dynamic society.
Okay, dynamic society. What does that look like?
He contrasts it with a static society, one resistant to change, clinging to tradition, and suppressing dissenting voices. Those societies value obedience over creativity and ultimately become unsustainable. They lack the flexibility to adapt to challenges and inevitably collapse.
It sounds a bit like those dystopian novels where everyone has to conform to strict rules or face dire consequences.
There are definitely parallels. A dynamic society, on the other hand, embraces change, encourages innovation, and values critical thinking. It allows individuals to challenge the status quo, propose new ideas, and seek better solutions.
So it's a society that's constantly evolving and adapting, a society that values creativity and critical thinking as the engines of progress.
Exactly. And this brings us back to the individual's role in this process. Deutsch argues that individual creativity is the spark that ignites progress.
But how can individual creativity thrive in a world that seems increasingly complex and interconnected? It can feel overwhelming to even try to be creative.
It can. But that's where Deutsch's principle of optimism comes in.
Optimism. I think we could all use a dose of that right now. What's Deutsch's take on optimism?
It's not just about having a positive outlook. It's a principle rooted in his understanding of knowledge and problem solving. He believes there are no inherent limits to what we can know or achieve.
So it's not wishful thinking. It's a belief in the power of human reason and creativity to solve problems and create a better future.
Exactly. Every problem, according to Deutsch, is ultimately solvable. Every challenge represents an opportunity for progress. This optimistic outlook isn't about ignoring difficulties, but about having the courage to face them head-on, to embrace change, and to strive for a better future.
It's about believing that things can get better and then taking action to make it happen.
Yes. And this brings us full circle to that mind-blowing concept we discussed earlier, the multiverse.
Okay, back to the multiverse. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the idea that there are infinite versions of reality out there. What does this have to do with optimism and progress?
Well, if the multiverse interpretation of quantum mechanics is correct, then the possibilities for progress are literally infinite. If every quantum event leads to a branching of reality, then there's a universe out there where every problem has been solved, every challenge overcome.
So it's like there's this infinite reservoir of knowledge and potential just waiting to be tapped. But how do we access it? Can we build an interdimensional portal and travel to these other universes?
While Deutsch doesn't offer a blueprint for interdimensional travel, he suggests that our minds are already capable of exploring the multiverse through the power of imagination and reason.
So we can journey to other universes in our minds.
Yes, through thought experiments, through the exploration of different possibilities and perspectives, we can expand our understanding of what's possible and even glimpse solutions to seemingly intractable problems.
This is making me rethink what it means to be creative. Is it possible that our most creative insights, our most groundbreaking ideas are somehow inspired by or influenced by other universes?
That's a fascinating question. Deutsch doesn't directly address it, but it's certainly a possibility worth pondering. If the multiverse is real, and if we can access it through our minds, then perhaps our most innovative ideas are drawn from this vast well of possibilities.
So we're not limited by our own experiences and knowledge. We can draw inspiration from an infinite source of creativity.
It's a truly mind-boggling concept, isn't it? And it underscores one of Deutsch's core points, that our understanding of the universe is constantly evolving, and what we consider impossible today might be commonplace tomorrow.
So we need to stay open to new ideas, new discoveries, new ways of seeing the world.
Absolutely. And that openness is essential to combat what Deutsch calls bad philosophy, those ideas that hinder scientific progress and limit our understanding of reality.
Okay, bad philosophy again. We touched on this earlier, but I'm still a bit puzzled. How can philosophy, a field dedicated to seeking truth and wisdom, actually hold back progress?
Deutsch argues that certain philosophical ideas, while perhaps well-intentioned, can lead to intellectual stagnation by promoting vague, anthropocentric, or simply incorrect views of the world. He points to instrumentalism, the focus on the predictive power of theories without regard for their explanatory value.
So it's like saying, as long as it works, who cares why it works? But isn't knowing why things work essential to understanding them deeply?
Exactly. Deutsch argues that this kind of thinking stifles scientific curiosity and limits our ability to make truly meaningful progress. He also critiques positivism, the idea that only things that can be directly observed are meaningful.
But so much of science, especially modern physics, deals with concepts that are beyond our direct observation.
It does. Think about the concept of an atom. We can't see individual atoms with the naked eye, but we know they exist based on a vast body of evidence and explanatory power. If we restrict ourselves to only what we can directly observe, we'll never grasp the true nature of reality.
It's like saying that because we can't see the wind, it doesn't exist. It's absurd.
Exactly. Deutsch argues that good explanations often involve abstract concepts, counterintuitive ideas, and things invisible to our senses.
And this brings us back to the idea of the multiverse, something we can't directly observe, at least not yet.
Precisely. If we adhere to the tenets of positivism, we'd have to dismiss the possibility of a multiverse simply because we can't directly see it. But Deutsch would argue that's a mistake. He's not saying we should blindly accept the multiverse as truth, but we should be open to exploring the possibility, especially if it offers a compelling explanation for observed phenomena.
So it's about being willing to entertain ideas that challenge our current understanding, even if they seem strange or counterintuitive at first.
Exactly. And this openness to new ideas, even radical ones, is essential for what Deutsch calls the beginning of infinity.
The beginning of infinity, what does he mean by that?
It's his way of saying that we're just at the beginning of an infinite journey of discovery and innovation. There are no inherent limits to what we can achieve, only the limits imposed by our own creativity and our willingness to embrace new knowledge.
It's an inspiring thought, but also a bit overwhelming. We've covered so much ground already, from the nature of good explanations to the concept of the multiverse. Where do we go from here?
Well, we've explored the foundation of Deutsch's thought, the power of explanations, and the vast potential of human creativity. Now, in our final segment, we can delve into some of the more controversial implications of these ideas, from the objective nature of beauty to the flaws of certain political systems and even the ethics of artificial intelligence.
Okay, I'm ready to dive even deeper. Okay, we're back and ready to dive into some of the more controversial implications of Deutsch's ideas. In the last segment, you mentioned the objective nature of beauty. This one really caught my attention. How can beauty be objective? Isn't it completely subjective, a matter of personal taste?
It's a common assumption, but Deutsch challenges it head-on. He proposes that beauty, like scientific truth, is grounded in the idea of hard-to-vary explanations. Think about a great work of art, whether it's a painting, a symphony, or a novel.
Okay, I'm picturing a masterpiece, something that truly resonates with people across generations.
Yeah, these works capture something deep and meaningful. They have a coherence, a complexity, a depth that can't be easily replicated or altered.
So it's not just about personal preferences, it's about the work itself, the way it embodies certain truths or principles in a way that's both profound and hard to vary.
That's Deutsch's argument. He argues that great works of art, like great scientific theories, offer a kind of explanation. They explain something about the human condition, about the world, or even about the nature of beauty itself.
I'm starting to see where he's going with this. It's not that everyone will have the same emotional reaction to a work of art, but there's something about the work itself that transcends individual preferences. It's about the depth and complexity of the explanation it offers.
Precisely. Just as a good scientific theory is hard to vary while still explaining the observations, a great work of art is hard to vary while still retaining its power, its beauty.
This makes me think about those moments when I've encountered a work of art that's truly moved me, something that's shifted my perspective or made me feel deeply connected to something larger than myself. Maybe those are glimpses of this objective beauty moments when I'm resonating with the truth that transcends my own subjective experience.
It's a beautiful thought,
Yeah.
and it speaks to the power of art to connect us to something deeper and more universal.
Okay, we've explored some pretty heady concepts, but let's shift gears a bit and talk about politics. Specifically, Deutsch's critique of voting systems and the idea of the will of the people.
This is definitely a territory where Deutsch sparks some controversy.
Yeah.
He argues that many voting systems are fundamentally flawed because they rely on this notion of a collective will of the people, which he sees as an illusion.
I can see how that could be controversial. A lot of democracies are based on the idea that voting represents the will of the people. So, what's Deutsch's issue with that concept?
He uses a thought experiment to illustrate his point. Imagine a group of people trying to decide what to have for dinner. Some want pizza, some want sushi, and some want tacos. How do you determine the will of the group?
It seems like a simple enough problem. You could take a vote and the majority wins, right?
That's the typical approach. But Deutsch argues that it oversimplifies things. What if someone's preferences change depending on what others are having? Or what if some people feel more strongly about their choice than others? Simple majority voting doesn't capture these nuances.
So he's saying that reducing individual preferences to a single vote can distort the true picture of what people want.
Exactly. And he points to something called Arrow's impossibility theorem, which is a mathematical proof that demonstrates the inherent flaws of many voting systems.
Okay, I'm not a mathematician, so try to explain this theorem in plain English.
Basically, Arrow's theorem shows that no voting system can perfectly satisfy a set of seemingly reasonable criteria. It's always possible to find scenarios where the outcome of a vote doesn't accurately reflect the preferences of the individuals involved.
So even with a seemingly fair voting system, there will always be cases where the result feels arbitrary or even unfair.
That's the gist of it. Deutsch uses this to argue that we need to be more critical of the idea that voting can magically reveal some unified will of the people.
So what's the alternative? Is he advocating for a completely different system of decision-making?
Deutsch doesn't offer a concrete solution, but he emphasizes the importance of open and dynamic debate. He believes that progress in politics, as in any other field, comes from the constant generation and criticism of ideas, not from trying to find some mythical consensus.
So it's about embracing the messiness of the democratic process and recognizing that there will always be disagreements and competing viewpoints.
Yes, and that's actually a good thing, according to Deutsch. It's through this constant clash of ideas that we can refine our understanding of the world and make progress towards a better future.
This conversation has really challenged my assumptions about how political systems work. It makes me think about the limitations of voting and the importance of fostering a culture of open debate and critical thinking.
That's one of the things I appreciate about Deutsch's work. He constantly pushes us to question our assumptions, to dig deeper, and to seek better explanations, even when those explanations challenge our deeply held beliefs.
So we've talked about the objective nature of beauty, explored the flaws of certain political systems, and even delved into the mind-blowing concept of the multiverse. Is there anything else that Deutsch tackles in The Beginning of Infinity?
He covers a wide range of topics, from the nature of time and causality to the ethics of artificial intelligence, and even the role of humor in human progress. It's a truly expansive work that touches on almost every aspect of human experience.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey. It's clear that Deutsch's ideas are both challenging and inspiring. They push us to rethink our understanding of the universe, our place within it, and our potential to create a better future.
I couldn't agree more. His work is a testament to the power of human reason and creativity, and it offers a powerful antidote to the pessimism and cynicism that often permeate our world.
So to our listeners out there, we encourage you to pick up The Beginning of Infinity and explore these ideas for yourself. It's a book that will stay with you long after you finish reading it, and it might just change the way you see the world.
Until next time, keep those minds open and keep diving deep into the big questions that shape our understanding of the universe and ourselves.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into The Beginning of Infinity. We'll see you next time.